Barbara McQuade is a former U.S. attorney, University of Michigan law professor, and an MSNBC legal analyst. Charlie Sykes is a columnist and an MSNBC contributor. And MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin joins me here in studio. Barbara, what is going on here?
Well, I think one thing that's important for people to understand is it is ingrained in Department of Justice lawyers that the Department of Justice is unique among cabinet agencies in that the lawyers there must be true to the rule of law, and they must resist any efforts to do something that is not just politically based or partisan based, but anything that would taint even the appearance of that fair-handed administration of justice. And so the idea that a case would be dismissed, not because of the merits, as Emil Bove said in that letter, but so that Mayor Adams could assist in enforcing the president's immigration agenda. That is just not a proper purpose for making a charging decision, whether to charge or to dismiss charges. And so I'm not surprised to see this slew, this cascade of resignations. And I'm very proud of these lawyers of integrity for standing up for the rule of law.
And Lisa, the two that we mentioned, these are not liberals. These are people who clerked for conservative justices. Have we ever seen anything like this?
We haven't seen anything like this, Chris, in a variety of different ways. But let me contrast this with the prior situation. During the first Trump administration, when Roger Stone was convicted, there was a huge kerfuffle over how he was going to be sentenced. And there were 4 prosecutors that had worked on a sentencing memo that was then revoked by their bosses at the direction of people in the Trump Department of Justice. One of them, John Kravis, resigned from the department entirely. 3 others of them resigned from the case, but they didn't leave the department. And at that point, nobody said to them, either you sign this or you'll be fired. It was understood that they were being asked to do something that they thought violated their own obligations and their own understanding of the case, and they were allowed to remain in the Department of Justice. That's not what's going on here. Danielle Sassoon writing an 8-page reasoned letter for why she felt that, consistent with her duty to the office and her duty of candor to the judges that she appears before, she could not, in good faith, make that motion to dismiss. And the response is, if you can't do what this administration is asking you to do, not only will you be fired, but there's an executive order to that effect that your boss, our boss, the President of the United States, has essentially directed us to follow. That's unprecedented.
Barbara, what is it like inside that public integrity unit right now? Help us to understand what's going on.
Well, I don't know all the things that are going on, but the information I received from someone I know and trust told me that the entire public integrity section, some 20 to 22 lawyers, have been called into a room and told that unless one of them signs the motion to dismiss in the next hour, then all of them will be fired. I see that Reuters is now reporting that one of the lawyers has stepped forward to say, I will sign it just to spare the others their jobs.
Lisa?
Yeah, and I have 2 sources now, Chris, who we can now report that that meeting took place as Barbara is describing it. Emil Bove convened that meeting this morning. One of our sources says it was over a video call, but he essentially told them they needed to determine who was going to sign it. And Bove promised leadership positions, according to both of my sources, to whoever would sign it. Now, one of my sources says what Barbara said. He gave them an hour deadline to decide who was going to be the person to put themselves on the chopping block. Reuters now having that reporting that somebody indeed has stepped forward to spare their colleagues the indignity of being fired simply for doing their jobs.
I mean, Barbara, help us. This is an extraordinary situation. And it is one thing to say, I would like to stand up. I'm going to stand up for the integrity of the office. I'm going to stand up for my own integrity. There's also a real world, right? People have mortgages. People have kids in college. People have bills. People may fear for retribution for themselves or their families. Talk about the decision that would have had to have been made and the kind of calculations that people would have had to have made inside that room in 60 minutes.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of the situation Sally Yates found herself in 2017 when she was asked to enforce the president's initial travel ban, which, of course, was found to be illegal because it applied even to people who were green card holders. And she said, it's not constitutional. I'm going to direct the department not to enforce it. And, of course, that resulted in her termination. To stand up to bullies means you're likely to go. And I do think I feel for them to be in this position, not only for all the reasons you mentioned, Chris, but there's also this reality. We'll all get fired, but who's going to replace us? They're going to hire us with loyalists to make sure this never happens again. And so rather than having a public integrity section with 22 lawyers, we will now have a public lack of integrity section with 22 lawyers who are willing to go along with all of the political instincts as opposed to upholding the rule of law. So it's a very difficult decision to be in this position. And I don't fault this lawyer for stepping forward to say, I'll end the bleeding now.
So, Charlie, we have not seen many people stand up to Trump, frankly, certainly not in this cycle or, in this case, stand up to the Justice Department. Do you think this is a unique situation, or could it inspire others to take the same approach, not even necessarily at the Justice Department, but elsewhere, where they feel that the reason they got into their jobs is being thwarted?
Well, that's a great question, because courage is contagious, and it is interesting that in a period in which so many other folks are bending the knee, you have this young woman, Danielle Sassoon, who basically says, "Look, not on my watch." A principled conservative who said, "I'm willing to give up my job because I am not going to go along with all of that." And you saw the domino effect that had. We're now up to 7 attorneys who have resigned. This is more than lost their jobs during the 1973 Saturday Night Massacre during Watergate. So I think a lot of lawyers and people throughout government have to ask themselves, do you want to be Emil Bove, or do you want to be Danielle Sassoon? What role do you want to play? How do you want to be remembered? So again, is this a one-off? We don't know. But we've been waiting for someone to stand up. And once again, I'm struck by the fact that it's a young woman, not one of the old guard, not one of the senior United States senators. It is a young woman who is, obviously at the peak of her career, the beginning of her career, and she's willing to take on the President of the United States, take on the Department of Justice, because what's happening is just fundamentally wrong.
Barbara, I want to dig a little deeper into those allegations, specifically the idea of a quid pro quo. Sassoon wrote this: although Mr. Bove disclaimed any intention to exchange leniency in this case for Adams's assistance in enforcing federal law, that is the nature of the bargain laid bare in Mr. Bove's menu. Now, we just heard Mayor Adams deny quid pro quo. Emil Bove has denied it too. But that said, what do you just make of the allegation? And do you see this going anywhere? I mean, considering the fact, and we just saw this with this meeting being called, that it is Emil Bove and his boss, Pam Bondi, who are the ones calling the shots.
Yeah, I want to respond directly to that point, Chris, because the remarks that Eric Adams made are so classic. Because no one says this out loud. No one says, I am offering you a bribe. I would like you to enforce President Trump's immigration agenda in New York City, and in exchange, we will dismiss these charges. That's not how it goes. Instead, they have a conversation. They talk about here's what we want, here's what you want. They go their separate ways. So the idea that Danielle Sassoon is on the spot going to say, I believe this is bribery taking place. It didn't happen then. It didn't happen until that letter came directing her to dismiss the charges. And there's a footnote on page 1 where Emil Bove says, by the way, despite all these appearances, this is not a bribe. We are not asking him to enforce President Trump's immigration rules in exchange for this dismissal. That's exactly what this is. And the other thing that's so offensive about this is they didn't just dismiss the charges. They didn't just pardon him. They wanted to dismiss the charges without prejudice, meaning they could be brought again. So in other words, they wanted to keep Eric Adams on a short leash to make sure he continues to be their operative in New York City, because any false move, they could reinstate these charges just like that.
There was no pardon. The decision was made to go another way. Barbara McQuade, Charlie Sykes, Lisa Rubin, thank you for being with us for this breaking news.